greeting students. We are now in week 2 and we're starting to do our online interactions, and so this is a lecture on Woodside and McCamm's Human Services General Information. And so one of the things that becomes really important in this topic and in this chapter is how human services is utilized rurally, urban, in the community, in homes, in families. And so as you read this chapter, it's going to be really foundational to you really understanding how your community resource files becomes very valuable. You've started to do research on the first part of your community resource file, and you're going to find, I want you to look for resources that are rural, that is serving individuals in the country, more senior populations, when it comes to food services and health services. Their access to resources in the rural areas is going to be very different from access to resources in the urban community. Inner city Dallas, inner city Fort Worth is what we mean by urban. You know, there are some challenges to accessing resources. Sometimes challenges is transportation, geography, where your clients are located, where they live. Other challenges may be behavioral or mental health issues that hinder people from accessing resources that are available to them. I want you to think about, as you think about people you know who take advantage or use social services, what are some of the barriers to receiving or accessing those resources? You know, I participated in a research project in the Oak Cliff area, and we were researching the hindrance or the barriers to accessing resources or accessing healthy food. And people had really interesting stories and examples of what would hinder them from accessing healthy foods. I'd like for you to take a few minutes and write down 2 or 3 things that you think might be barriers to accessing healthy food, for an example, in inner city Dallas. Okay, so street lights were a problem. Feral dogs, wild dogs running around the community, hindered older adults from being able to stand on the bus stop, having bus stops that aren't really very operational. They were broken, they were torn down. The streets don't have sidewalks. They talked about continued drug activity and other crimes in their community that would hinder them from getting out in the community to go ride the bus to other places in Dallas to access healthy food. You would never make that connection, but it's really interesting, people's perceived barriers. When you're working with human service clients, it's going to be very, very important that you understand that your clients have perceptions about what their barriers are. And then there are real barriers, such as there's a difference between one region of Dallas, access to resources, and another region of Dallas. I'll let you figure that out. But there are real differences, and I'd like for you to think about how those differences hinder clients from being able to get to viable resources. So one of the things that we're going to talk about are risk management factors, issues around risk management as a human service worker. So you're passionate about working with your client, you're passionate about working with the community, you're passionate about working in your organization, but you have to also take under consideration what are some of the risks. For example, when we were doing the research in inner city Oak Cliff, one of the things we had to talk about is what are the risks to the students who are researching or who are interviewing clients? What are the risks to the clients? You'll talk a little later in the semester about confidentiality and autonomy. I want you to look up those words, confidentiality, autonomy. I also want you to look at safety, consideration around community-based safety, risks to the reputation of your organization if something were to go wrong. So I'd like for you to take under consideration those terms as you make your readings this week. When we think about risk, the question is, what is the risk to the client? What is the risk to maybe property? What is risk to the organization? What are risks to you, the human service worker? What is the risk to maybe the reputation of the organization? Maybe the board of directors has some concern about you being out knocking on doors. Maybe the message is not something that they want you to convey, that you're always available. accessing resources. In this week's lecture and this week's activities, you'll have some vignettes that I'd like for you to answer, and you'll be using them in your discussion board. I hope today's discussion has been a little helpful to kind of guide your reading and your interaction online during the discussion board, and also make the connection between your community resource file, your service learning project, and the text that you're having to read. We'll see you next time.